Let's go in. Matt, you want to impersonate me? No, I'm just... Welcome to The Ancient Way. I'm James.
I'm Marlia.
We've got a big guest today, Matt Tommey. Matt, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
We're so excited to have you.
Yeah.
Hey, so for our listeners, can you share a little bit about who you are, what you do? Give them your life spill.
That's right. In 5 minutes or less. No,
Yes.
I'm Matt Tommey. I'm an artist, an author, speaker. I'm primarily focused these last 13 years on helping artists thrive spiritually, artistically, and in business. So how do you take the God-given dream that he's given you, but actually make a living in it in the marketplace? And before that was both in ministry and then got out of ministry and was in the marketplace for a number of years. And so was kind of doing all those things. And in 2009, the Lord sort of changed the script on me and gave me a prophetic dream that I was a father to artists and was to raise up an army of artists all over the world to reveal his glory in the earth. And that started this crazy ride that we've been on since then. And but as I'm shifting now, still doing everything I'm doing with the arts, but focusing a lot of time and effort as well on a new book that I've got and called God's Plan for Living, and really taking a lot of the things that I've taught artists over the years about how to thrive and who God's called them to be, but sharing that with everybody.
Yeah.
That's really the message of the kingdom.
Yeah, right.
How cool. We're definitely going to have to get a copy of that book and
Yeah.
link it at the bottom so we can sell it on our
definitely.
page.
No, definitely.
I'm so excited for that book. I'm legitimately going to read it because
Yeah.
Awesome.
it's so
Well,
inspiring.
I listened to you on YouTube, your podcast, and it's legit. Equipping people with that.
Yeah, it's the practical stuff of life, I think, that a lot of times, Christians who love God have a vision for what he's called them to be, but don't have the practical knowledge they need, whether it's in business or how to take the vision that God's given them and actually walk it out.
Yeah.
So true.
And so I've just, through my own journey of brokenness and woundedness and trying to figure this thing out, we all learn clues along the way to be able to help others.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so-
that's what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is like the authority that you walk out, you're able to impart it to other people and share it with other people, weaponize other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, my first book, Unlocking the Heart of the Artist, that's what it kind of came out of, was this idea that, wow, I'd walked through a lot of woundedness as a kid, lost some significant losses in my life, sexually abused as a young teenager, and then that went on for many years and really caused this big identity crisis in me that threw me into addiction, that threw me into now learning to perform for God as opposed to living out of that life-giving encounter with him.
Yeah.
And so I found myself in, as a worship leader and in ministry and married and doing all this stuff, and yet really, really wounded on the inside. And I just found that as a creative, obviously, that squelches who God's created you to be.
Sure.
If the pipe that he's trying to flow his kingdom through is full of junk and woundedness and all that sort of thing, that's going to come out. And so through my own journey, I'm thinking, 2000 through 2008 or so, which was kind of the main part of that, I just really learned how to start walking in who God said I was and what he said I could do, and kind of living out of that place of the heart as opposed to that place of performance.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of that, in the middle of the place that I thought I was the most disqualified to be able to share healing and wholeness with people, and as a father, because that was the place that I'd been wounded the most. But that's what God does, right? Just like Gideon, he's like, oh man, a mighty warrior,
mighty man.
And so that's what he called me to, and it's been this beautiful journey of being able to kind of share the things that I've learned and am learning with others. So,
what do you feel like was the biggest key for you to make that shift?
I think the thing the enemy's always doing, right, is isolating and lying to us.
Yeah.
So, you're the only one. Nobody's as bad as you. Nobody's ever gone through this before.
Yeah.
And so, and I believe that hook, line, and sinker, because I didn't have a grid for any of that in my life. And I call it tap dancing for Jesus. That's all I knew how to do. And, growing up in the South in the 80s, 70s and 80s and early 90s, you didn't talk about things like you talk about them now, and so I had no grid or feeling like I could share any of this stuff that was going on
Right.
in my life. And so you just stuff it and keep going.
For sure.
And I think, I was sharing with you earlier before my friends Jim and Pat Banks, who now live here in the area. They're kind of been our spiritual parents, my wife and I, for a number of years. She was the first person who kind of, as I was leading worship, got off stage one day and she grabbed me by the shoulders 20-something years ago and looked in my eyes and said, "How are you really doing?" And I just broke. I mean, just nobody had ever how are you on the inside? Not the performing Matt, but the Matt that's really on the inside, because she could see me hurting.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that was the first time that anybody had ever kind of given me an escape hatch, if you will, to share the things that were going on in my heart. Let me know that Jesus was right there in the middle of it, that he loved me, in spite of all the things that I had done and walked through, all the habits, all the addictions, all the stuff. And she spoke life into me, and they continued to. And so I've tried to continue to do that to others, because I think that's what Jesus does.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
I love that. I think that's such a vital key, is that there has to be community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There has to be people that you choose to walk through things with.
Yeah.
Because that's also where wholeness comes.
Yeah.
It is with the Lord and with others.
Yeah.
We know that verse in James, which I always hated, that confess your sins to one another and you'll be healed.
Yeah.
There's a measure of healing, there's a measure of wholeness and freedom that you're never going to get outside of community.
For sure.
Right.
And we're made for that.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
the more that we can, as kingdom people, cultivate that sort of atmosphere of freedom and wholeness, the more people can get free and walk in the fullness of who they are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. This is true fellowship.
And it's being having the safe place for it.
Yeah.
I think it's our job as Christians to create the safe place, to
Absolutely.
create the space where people can just be vulnerable. I think that's why counseling has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Is because it's kind of taking the place of what the church really should be doing, but it's a safe place that people can process their pain.
Yeah.
But really, it's our job to come alongside people and put them around our arms and be like, "Yo, you're not alone. We're doing this together."
Yeah.
Well,
I think when we're walking in the confidence of who Jesus says we are, and we're actively listening to his voice, and whether you're at Walmart or as we say in East Texas, at the Walmart, or up at the Walmart,
that is our language.
That's right. I was up at the Walmart. But wherever you are, whether you're with a waitress or just whoever it is, you can hear the voice of the Lord, and when he nudges you and says, "Go a little further, or ask this question, or ask him about this,"
for sure,
you're creating that space where somebody can really come alive.
So
that's
true.
what the kingdom is all about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell us a little bit about your journey. Kind of what we were talking about earlier with you and your wife, and then how y'all even ended up all the way over here.
Yeah.
In East Texas.
Yeah, so we met at the University of Georgia mid-'90s. I immediately went to a Metro Atlanta church and was a youth pastor, and then was a worship leader for a lot of years. Tanya was a teacher, and so our son Cameron was born in 2003. So we were kind of doing life there, and all the healing journey that I was talking about just a minute ago. 2009, God kind of switched the script, raised up this army of artists, and it was like, for the first time in my life, double doors of favor just opened up. I was coming into alignment with who God said I was, my assignment, all of that. And so provision and opportunity and favor and all. I had a lady give me an art gallery, like, here's the keys.
Yeah.
And we started gathering artists and people started getting healed. I mean, it was just this really crazy story. And then in the middle of that, I had a friend of mine who was a pastor in Asheville. We were staff pastors together, and our church planted him in Asheville from Atlanta. He called me out of the blue. He said, "Hey, what are you doing these days?" I'm like, "Well, I'm like living the dream, dude." I'm like, God's showing up in the middle of it. And he said, "Well, we were praying, and we thought that we really believe that God's calling you to be our worship pastor." And I was like, "Dude, you have lost your mind. Like, I am not moving to Ash. Where? Like, no, I'm not moving there." And but I went up there, and the Lord was all over it. And he ended up moving us to Asheville. And the Lord said, "I'm moving you to a seat of influence in the arts community to put you in the seat of influence." And so, like every step of faith, you're like, show me and I'll step out. He's like, step out and I'll show you, right? And so we moved. That opened up a season of incredible favor where my hobby as a basket maker actually turned into a six-figure and then multi-six-figure art business all by itself. I started getting recognized in magazines and commissions, and I was recognized by the Smithsonian as an American artist under 40 on this registry they put out back in the day. And
cool.
I mean, it was just all this stuff started happening. Everybody's looking at me going, how did you do this? Like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. It's just the favor of God. I'm just like along for the ride. But on that journey, I started learning how to not only be who God had called me authentically to be, but also how to build a business, how to really thrive in the marketplace and start sharing that with others. And so we're bumping along. I'm traveling all over the world speaking. I went to Australia for a month on a book tour. I'm going to Europe on the weekends and flying back and then making art during the week. I mean, it was crazy. And in 2016, after I got back from Australia for a month, we were just like, man, this traveling thing is hard. Is there a way that we can do it online or, something like that, still reach the nations, but not lose my family,
For sure.
And so the Lord began to lead us in doing an online mentoring program. And that really just took things to a whole new level. It, through technology, and I had a number of prophetic words about that. So we were kind of just, like we all do, kind of pull on the string of what this looks like. He started leading us in that, and that's turning now to a global movement of artists who are learning to, take their calling as an artist and be able to do it in the marketplace with authenticity and make a living from what they do. And so I had my gallery, had my books, had my studio, all this is kind of rolling along. And in 2019, kind of at the height of this, in the fall, the Lord told me, he said, he gave me a dream one night and I was standing at the back of my studio and it was completely swept clean and light was coming in the window and all this kind of stuff. And, I was thanking the Lord for what a beautiful season that it had been. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, like I got to close the studio. Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm like, couldn't the money have run out and, things like really sucked and then I move on. But like, no, I think he always gives us, especially as you mature in the Lord, he always gives you these opportunities to choose. You can keep doing this. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to love you. Or I've got this opportunity.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of this switch. And we moved my studio. It was right before COVID and all that happened. We started kind of that process. And then throughout the COVID year, we just started thinking, hey, Cameron is getting ready to graduate. If I'm not going to be doing my baskets full time and I'm focusing on this, like, do we have to be in Asheville? The Lord started leading us through, again, a number of prophetic dreams and just confirmations in the journey. And long story short, we started looking for houses, found a house. Tanya's mom and dad lived out here, and we wanted to be closer to them. And it was just very clear the Lord was all over it. So here we are in the middle of rural East Texas going, what? It's kind of like when we moved to Asheville. What are we doing here? Is anything good happening in East Texas? And yet, we're really sensing that God's got us here for a purpose.
Absolutely.
And so meeting you guys and others, just trying to, walk in what God's got for us. So
Well, I mean, I know I thought the same thing. Like, why on earth here? That's been my thing growing up, is like, why do I want to make movies and do all these fun, incredible things? And you put me in
this place,
Tyler, East Texas.
Yeah.
Well, what? But then the truth is, like, there's a history here too. There's like this spiritual history here.
Rich spiritual history.
Very rich. And it's like, man, the reason there's nothing here, so to speak, and that he's pulling all these people together and stuff. It's like he's up to something.
Well, that was the crazy part, I think, for us. We found this house, and literally, I mean, this is super spiritual. Tanya's mom and dad live in Emory, and we knew that Tyler was kind of the big town, and we're like, we don't want to be in Emory because, like, there's a feed store. I mean, it's nice, but it's like
it's not Asheville.
That's about it. And I'm like, we have an online business. We got to have super fast internet and all that. And I wanted a barn and a little bit of property and all that. And so we literally just like, well, Lindale kind of looks like it's in the middle. We bought this house, and then I'm on a podcast with a friend of mine who lives out toward Shreveport, actually. And she was like, so did you move to Lindale because of all the big, international ministries that are there. And I'm like, what? And she's like, you don't know about that? Like Keith Green and YWAM and all the stuff. And I started reading about the redemptive history of this area. And I'm like, okay, something's up. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, especially Lindale too, for sure.
I literally thought that though, like you moving with Keith Green, with your worship pastor history, and there's something pure there, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, one of the words that we got, and it's kind of one of those things you don't want to. I want to say this, but the Lord, through a couple of prophetic words, said one of the reasons that you're going there is to help break off the spirit of religion on the
100.
region.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, well, great. That sounds like fun,
The territorialism.
Let me just bust into that,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But again, I think, when you look at the Jesus model, our model is always come in, take over, influence, all this kind of thing. And Jesus' model of transformation was one by one.
Yep.
Is loving people, releasing them into life and freedom. And that's how churches grow. That's how people come into who they are. That's how influence is established. And so I can do that.
Well,
so
I want to share something here. One thing I brought up at one of our episodes, it was a realization for me because I felt the same way. It's like the territorialism, like the gates of hell shall not prevail. We're going to bust in and take over. But what I noticed, and you're a catalyst for this, you're one of them, is that there are pockets of the Lord that you don't expect that are there. And it's like, wait a minute. There are people littered out through here, and the Lord is like connecting dots.
Yeah,
we're just starting to hold hands.
Beautiful web of not abrasiveness, but it is that love, and it's the connections and stuff. So, like when I met you, I was like, "Oh, interesting."
Yeah. Well, we were so blessed when we came to visit y'all's church, and even when I met you that day at the thing, the board that we're on and everything, we're walking down the street, and I told my wife, I'm like, I'm literally vibrating, like, as I'm talking to this guy, like the Holy Ghost was all over us, like it was so crazy. But it's, I think when you walk in the kingdom, I'm always looking for people that are resonating with the same, the same thing, and. So I'm looking for that. I think we're all looking for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I kind of want to go back into your story too a little bit, following the Lord's voice, like the good shepherd of it. Like you were on such a pathway of like the success and everything with the baskets, and then when he gave you that dream of like the cleared out barn, and you being thankful for it, and you following him after that, anyways. That's what he does too. He's like he puts us in spaces. And we fill it with love. Like we fill it with this substantial presence. And then it's like, okay, good. Yeah. We've redeemed this area. On to the next thing. He is so outward, I've noticed that too. It's like, and this is for people listening, like if you feel stuck, it's like, man, the opportunity is there. The harvest is right at hand. And we talk about this all the time. But I think that's where the movement is. Yeah. That's where the growth is. And the new things is like, love the people where you're at. Yeah.
The funny thing for me in that was, I think if you were to ask people up until now, what's one of the core things Matt talks about, it'd be identity and renewing your mind. And I was like, all the work you think you've done around identity, just let the Lord remove the thing. Where you got a little too much identity. Yeah. Still hanging on to. Mm-hmm. And, obviously God designs us in a way to receive life and receive fulfillment from the things that we do. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to lie, it was a very, very difficult transition for me to really think, God, how in the world could you have brought me to this place of fulfillment and influence and life and all that, and then ask me to give it all up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, like I'm the only one that he's ever done that to, right?
Yeah.
Sure. I think there's some other stories about that. So it legit took me.
Feels like Abraham.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Well, it does, and it took me a couple of years really to work through that. Mm. And again, I think we always think, we're in a hurry, we're going to miss it, all this. And I mean, God's timeline is so different from us. Does he not know that it's going to take me a while to do this? And that's why he's dropping these seeds, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Along the way and allowing me to transition in a way that that's going to be healthy. And so it was not easy, but it's been something that, with the Lord and with my wife, we've had to, get used to and work through. And I'm a planner by nature, strategy, vision. Here's where we're going, that sort of thing. And this has been, okay, take this next step and then wait. And I'll show you the next thing. And a friend of mine asked me the other day, so how's that going for you? I'm like, it's not going good. But every day I'm getting up and I'm laying it before Jesus and I'm like, okay, here we are. Let's keep walking.
Yeah.
So
well, that's rest too.
Yeah.
It's like I sit and wait to follow him.
Yeah,
you don't have to produce anything.
That's right.
And you made a post about that like recently.
Well, yeah, everybody's like, oh, Matt, these posts you make on Facebook, they're so profound. I'm like, this is my quiet time. I'm preaching to myself, but yeah, the Lord was speaking to me yesterday that rest is not a reward, but it's just a reality.
Yeah.
They were the posture of our heart that we're supposed to be living from in the kingdom. And that's just a fundamental shift from the striving and the making things happen on your own. So
anyway. That's true.
That's what I feel like is so vastly, it's like a valuable key that many people will overlook, right? So if we think that God is bad, or we think that he's punishing us for the success, or he's like, okay, well, you got too big, your head got too big, so now I got to strip it. Like, if you have that mentality of him, you miss the gold that he's trying to impart to you.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, I'm actually uncovering more of who you are.
Right.
You've just been looking in one vein. I'm trying to show you the whole picture. This is a mosaic.
Yeah.
It's not just you're always on the same track, you know?
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, in this process of, I would say, unraveling more, becoming more and more truly who the Lord created you to be, what was that like in relationship with your wife, like walking through that together?
We are a great match, and I think one of the things that we've learned over the years is to receive each other as a gift. We are so completely different. I'm a big vision, quick moving, fast processor. She's much more of a slower processor, but very intentional, strategic, and that sort of thing. And so, early on in our marriage, I'm like, come on, let's go, and she's like, I don't know about it. So it felt like she's dragging me behind, and she feels like I'm running after, things that are, not going to work out and all that. And once we kind of looked at each other and go, oh, wow, like this is a awesome power package that God's given us here, that if I can trust her with the dreams of my heart and trust her to sense the timing with that and strategy, now we've got this beautiful, kind of two wings of the plane, if you will. And so that's been we're growing deeper in that, like everybody. I think that we've been married 25 years now and be 26 coming up in April. And that's much more the rhythm of our life is I'll feel something or I'll kind of sense something from the Lord, and then we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about what it looks like to work that out and the timing of it. And, she sees things from a completely different perspective, and but that's God's design.
Yeah.
And that's how we, I don't know who said it, we're not called to compete, we're called to complete, each other. And I just love that sentiment. So, yeah.
Was she like on board? Did she catch the vision? Was she already like, hey, I actually already feel like the Lord is leading us in that? What did that look like? Do you feel like she kind of all brought also pieces to it?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm the drama queen in the relationship. I'm like the one that's like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And she's like, it's gonna be okay. We'll be fine.
Interesting.
And so that's just the kind of always the way that's been. And so she really, I think, helps to bring the rhythm of what we're doing, where I'll kind of sense the next steps, but I may want to do it too fast or include too many things or whatever. She'll be like, well, what about this? And what about that? So she's not necessarily the one that comes up with the ideas, but she's the one that's helping to form it and mold it and get the pace of the journey with me. So
that is brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, one, I really value healthy marriages. So I really wanted to kind of hear your intake on that, because I think that is also something that's truly needing to be cultivated.
Yeah.
Is real healthy marriages, realizing that you're together, you're not against each other.
Yeah, and we just realized too that, unless we're both in full faith for this, we're not going to do it. It's either not God or not the right time.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the way we try to live our lives with that. I'm not under the, the the thought that I've got the full revelation here, and she just needs to get on board with it. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster, with that. So
yeah, well, and to be led by peace too,
absolutely.
To know when to say no and to not move.
Yeah,
that's a big one. That's a tough one for That's a learning curve.
Well, I really believe, that verse in I think it's Proverbs 29:16 that says, "In his heart a man plans his way, but the Lord orders his steps."
Yes.
And it's like this co-laboring with Jesus is like it is the Lord for us to dream and desire and to put things out there, but then we got to put them out there and let him adjust. And so I think that's where Tanya really comes in to help me say, listen, remember, this is a journey. It's not going to happen in 2 months like you thought it was. This may take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Everything doesn't have to happen,
immediately
right now. Like when I'll just give you an example. When we moved here, I came in, I'm like, all right, we got to start visiting churches. We got to get out there. We got to find, and so, I mean, we have visited every church in East Texas. I mean, Lord Jesus. And, I mean, we found the crazy ones. We found the good ones. We found all the
I love
ones.
it.
And, but there was this thing like, we got to get connected, all this. And she's like, you know what? What about if we just let's just take a step here and, take a step back. And so we're always kind of in that beautiful tension of learning to trust the Lord and trust each other.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Sweet.
That's true growth.
Yeah.
That's true maturity, though.
It is maturity, yeah.
It's like honoring each other.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. We're trying like everybody is, I guess.
Sure, yeah. Well, and like complementing each other's strengths too, the completedness of it, pursuing that, pursuing the Lord and using your strengths together. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that you just in you speaking is like you clearly focus on her strengths.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's a key in marriage. It's like if you focus on people's strengths, the rest of it doesn't matter. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I heard somebody say once, this is just random, but it made me think of it. They're like, especially in marriage, don't let roommate things dictate your marriage.
Yeah.
So like if like cleaning up the dishes or like things that you do as quote unquote roommates, you let it affect the unity that you carry.
Sure.
Anyways, it made me think of that. But
well, that's the Lord though, seeing the value in people, seeing the strength in people, calling that forward.
Yeah. Well, I think it was Miles Monroe that said this years ago that and he was speaking to husbands. He said, your wife is designed as a multiplier. Well, you give her a house, she makes a home. You give her groceries, she makes a dinner. You give her love, she'll multiply that back to you. You give her stress, anxiety, that, and I think that's for,
we're really good at that.
Yeah. Well, but I think, it's just this idea that, whatever I pour into my wife, she's going to mirror that back to me and even more. And that's, I think, for both of us, we realize that sowing and reaping is a real principle. Yeah. Whatever you sow in another person, that's what you're going to reap out of that relationship.
For sure.
And so you can just decide, well, what are you going to sow?
Yeah.
What do you, and even from a selfish standpoint, what is it that I want to receive out of this relationship? I better get my own brain right to be sowing that
take
into
the
her.
Initiative.
Yeah. And to lead. So
man, that's brilliant though.
It is.
Yeah.
That's a flipping key for relationships, man. Not even just marriages, friendships, community.
Yeah.
Because I've heard several people like they'll go into churches and they're like, "Oh, nobody was welcoming." And I was like, "Well, do you talk to anybody?"
Exactly.
Well, no. It's like, well, it's simple things.
Yeah.
Right.
So I really wanted to circle back, Matt. Tell me a little bit of like how you actually met the Lord and the supernatural, and what was that journey for you? Hearing His voice and letting His voice kind of unravel you. What did that?
Yeah, so I grew up in the church. Mom was a Methodist choir director for 100 years, it seemed like. So we were at churches all the time. I really had an encounter with Jesus and came to know Him when I was a young teenager. We moved, switched churches, and the funny thing was we were at a traditional Methodist church, but for some reason, they hired a youth pastor and his wife that had gone to ORU and Rhema Bible College.
Oh, that's
so we
funny.
got these Holy Ghost filled youth pastors.
They didn't tell them that in the interview.
I don't guess so, And I'm still friends with them to this day. But it's so funny. So there we were as young teenagers, and this was the mid '80s. I graduated high school in '91, so we're talking 86, 87. This is when like Don Moen was the hot worship leader. Like praise and worship was just coming out, and man, God started moving in our youth group, and I started leading worship when I was like 14 years old.
Wow.
I had taken piano since I was 5, so this is like 3 chords in the truth. I was playing by ear. Like this is, really, really cool.
Yeah.
And so that really, worship and coming to know the Lord, baptizing the Holy Spirit, all of that was happening in my formative years. This is interesting that all that was happening, which was so powerful. At the same time, the time that my parents were in the middle of a very, very difficult relationship that ended in divorce. That's when sexual abuse in my life started. So I was in this major, major tension of, man, I love Jesus and feel this calling and sense his presence, and I'm hearing his voice and doing everything I can. And at the same time, I'm being sexually abused by a family member over here and now addicted to porn and acting out and just all this stuff. And it was like, whoa, what is, no grid. And so I think, I just so relate to David, in that kind of situation, and have always taken comfort of God calling him a man after God's own heart, because I think regardless of the woundedness and the struggle of the journey, the trajectory of my heart has always been to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think the Lord, he knows the things that we're going to walk through in our life. Not that he, causes those things to happen, but, in this world you will have trouble, Jesus. As I'm walking through this, I'm so thankful that worship and his presence and the word of God was sown into my life early, so that in the middle of all the things that the enemy was trying to use to take me out, those were really my anchor. And even though I didn't know what to do with it all the time, and I didn't know how to function in that, I knew that I got to hold on.
Yeah.
I got to hold on. And I just kept going. And I think that, I tell artists all the time, and everybody, just like God's got a plan for your life, so does the enemy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really important to know that we got to come out of agreement with what the enemy's saying and into agreement with what God says.
Yeah.
And that worship for me, and just being able to get on the piano and be quiet with the Lord, no matter what I was going through in the depths of sin or in the depths of loneliness or whatever, if I could ever just get to the piano and worship and write and sing and just, allow that sort of to be a balm on my heart, that's always where I've experienced healing with the Lord. So,
yeah, that is David, man.
Yeah.
It is. And it's the yes in your heart throughout all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as we want to make it about, well, did you made the wrong decision or what? I'm like, you know what? This
doesn't matter.
No,
I've just given up that whole thing of this transactional. Well, this was right and that was wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, he's for me.
Absolutely,
he's with me. And this idea that, I'm not having to beg God to come into my situation. He's already here, in me, around me, through me, before me, and behind me. This is the reality of union. With Jesus.
Yeah.
So
it's because it's not a contract, it's a covenant.
Yeah. Whew, I'm going to bless myself this morning. So
that's good.
Yeah, it is good. Man, that's him though. That's the Lord.
Yeah.
He's for you.
Yeah.
And if you can level that out, that will unlock your life. He is good.
Yeah.
And he's for you. And so many times, even the enemy's plans are almost always correlated to what we're meant to walk in.
Absolutely.
Our destiny.
Absolutely.
And he tries to block it and does whatever he can to block it,
Yeah.
But, man, that's incredible.
Okay, so I really want to dive more. Sorry, I'm here for all the questions.
We're here.
Okay, good. So in your business with the artistry and learning the practicality things, what do you feel like is the biggest takeaway that you've had from that? Like, say the million guys, people, artists that you've gotten to talk with, what do you feel like is the one thing that people always seem to gravitate towards and extract?
Well, I think that when you learn that God's not asking us to do things for him out of our own intention, but to, like Jesus said, I just do the things I see the Father doing, right? So we really teach this concept of just co-laboring with him. Like I did a post yesterday in our mentoring program of, a morning meeting with God. Like this is part of my regular journey. I list out all the things in my journal of these are the things that I've got rolling right now on the left side of the paper. And now I shut up and I listen. I'm like, Jesus, what do you want to say? And that becomes my spirit-led to-do list.
Yeah.
And some things are like, just keep rolling. Great. Trust me in this. Other things are make a switch here, do this, do that. And so when you teach anybody that concept, again, it takes the pressure off of them from having to perform.
For sure.
That, you're only doing things that you see the Father doing, only doing things, you're responding to him in faith. And that doesn't mean that you're sitting on your butt.
Yeah.
Because that's the other side. I call it, wait, hope, and beg, right? We're just like, because a lot of people have that mentality that,
100%.
Well, there's a prophetic word over my life, or God's got this vision for my life. And so, bless God, I'm just going to sit here and trust for it to happen. Well, that's not how that works.
Right.
Bible says, be fruitful and then multiply. You were faithful in little, Matthew 25. Now I'm going to make you ruler over much. So it's, as you take the investment that God's given you and you use it, that's how increase comes in your life. But you can't do that with striving. So I'm always trying to bring people into this tension of, resting and listening, but also responding in faith and walking.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that people get. I would say the other thing, so many times people come into business or whatever it is, and they think, I got to learn how to do my website marketing, search engine optimization, how to find clients and all that. And they've got all this stuff, and it creates this striving in their heart. And they don't realize that they're operating out of this orphan spirit of just, trying to do it by themselves. And so I've just seen so many over the years that when you can teach somebody how to renew their mind in who God says they are and what he says they can do, and then teach them how to co-labor with the Spirit, get the brokenness in their heart healed, all the other stuff. I mean, listen, God's faithful to bring what you need when you need it.
For sure.
And so, because I tell people all the time, I can teach you all the marketing stuff you want.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a heart to be able to receive it, or you feel inadequate, or I'm not good enough, or God could never do that in my life, or money's bad, or money, if you need money in your life, you're greedy, and all this kind of, people have all these kind of weird religious mindsets. And I'm like, if we could just clear all that out of the way and get you seated in a kingdom mindset, then all the other stuff really flows much easier. So
it's like you can pursue those things outside of that, which is a curse.
Yeah.
But man, connect to him the simplicity of following his voice and just allowing him to lay those steps in front of you.
Yeah.
All that stuff falls into place.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to have that hope too, and to just expect it. And then when it happens, it's like,
that's what. So for me, with 2023, the Lord told me my word for this year is keep it simple.
Yeah.
It's like everything is simple. And if you try to complicate things, you're then moving in your own strength.
Sure.
For me, because I opened a business back in September. Like this is our second business or whatever, but there was so much of that. Like, okay, I'm overwhelmed because there's so many practical things that I have to get done that I feel like it's taking away from my family. It's taking away from my relationships, and I was getting swallowed up in stuff. And so for the Lord to say keep it simple, it's like the simple. What can I do today?
Yeah.
What can I be present with today?
Yeah.
Because I'm a doer by trade. I mean, if it can be done, by God, I'm going to do it twice. Your
nickname's the executioner.
I mean, good God, I just do it. But it's like you can either get into that grind mode, or you can just actually realize, one, where I'm already seated somewhere, so I'm not having to prove anything.
Yep.
I can actually just chill and realize that when the Lord is just putting something on my plate, you eat that.
Yeah.
And then he's going to give you something else.
Yeah.
Like he's not trying to force feed you a bunch of stuff that you can't handle.
His timing's perfect. Yeah. It's just what you need when you need it.
And it's like he wants us to enjoy life.
Yes.
So our only purpose isn't just work.
Right.
Yeah.
There are other relationships, like there are marriages, like all these things, like he sees the whole pot.
Yeah.
And so it's like being okay with, well, don't go grind for 15 hours.
Right.
The grind is not our inheritance.
Right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just not.
And that's being led from rest and being led by peace and joy.
Yeah.
To the grind of people.
You need to read my friend's book, my friend Shay Bynes. She's got a great book called Grace Over Grind.
Oh, good.
That's her whole, y'all should have her on the podcast. She's incredible. But yeah.
Well, that's true. The people that I talk to that are in the grind, that are giving advice.
Right.
There's
What's
not
her
much
name?
fruit, but grind,
Shay Bynes. Yeah. SHAE Bynes. Shay, I'm giving you a shout out. What?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. I'm here for it, man.
I'll read that.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, what were you saying? I interrupted y'all, but I was so pumped. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. I want to smash on the grind a little bit.
Okay, go for
it's
it.
It's just a curse. No, that's what we're doing. I'm down. I like it. Follow the Lord. Well, that's what I tell people. People that will offer the advice of like, you got to grind, you got to do this.
Right.
And like the fruit, usually their life is the grind and it's exhaustion.
And whatever you start, somebody said this to me years ago, whatever you start in the flesh, you got to maintain in the flesh.
Yes.
And it's like, that's so true. But when you learn to co-labor with the Lord, it's the loaves and the fishes, right? He becomes the accelerator and the multiplier and the one that can take our little offering and turn it into much more, not only for everybody else, but also give you overflow back for your own life, you know? And I just think that's the kingdom.
Yeah, let him build it.
Yeah. So,
another thing about your art and listening to I run a lot and I listen to you.
Oh, Lord.
One thing that
I'm always like, what do I say? What did I say?
Yeah, I got a list here.
Oh, my God.
We're going to go back through with a fine-tooth comb.
I know.
It's so needed. People so need to hear what you're saying on there, which is
100%.
true. The one thing, like people coming in, like, how do I share the gospel through my art?
Yeah.
And your thing is like, man, it doesn't have to be crosses and all that stuff.
Right.
It's like we are made in his image.
Yeah.
It's like the gospel comes out through our work.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it may be. Like we're redemptive in our nature and our creativity, and we're all creative. And that's one thing that you share in there that I so value. It's like, man, you don't have to have an agenda on it. Just be. Just create.
You know, if he can use a handkerchief and the jawbone of a donkey, he can use me. I mean, you know, I think
so true.
That's important for us all to realize. And I think that when you realize that we're designed to be carriers of the kingdom, we're ambassadors, you know, of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so when I'm creating and when I'm, you know, inviting the Holy Spirit into that process, he's eternal. It's like when God spoke the world into existence, it's still being created and because his word does not return void. And so when his spirit lives in and through the process of what we're doing as creatives, I believe that the Holy Spirit, you know, when I create a piece, he's going with that into, I've had people over the years, you know, Asheville's kind of a new agey kind of spiritualist, you know, sort of place. And people would come into the gallery and they're like, oh, wow, the vibration here is so cool. Like you know, so peaceful in here. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Yes, the Holy Ghost. No, I didn't say that. But I'm just, but it's like you realize that the peace of God,
for sure,
you know, is on your work.
Yes.
And I think for artists, especially who are Christians, when you come to your work with that ability to embrace the mystery, as opposed to, I've got to make Christian art that has scripture on it and has overt biblical metaphor and all. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, there's so much more.
Yeah.
That's limited.
Yeah, so limited. And it, you know, I want to create art that is beautiful, that stands up on its own in the marketplace, that is not overtly, you know, going to cause somebody to be like, oh, I don't want that because it's Christian. I'd much rather have work that was able to engage people. And I believe that, you know, as much as we want to create signs and wonders, I want to see my work heal people and lead people into healing and all that. As much as we want to create signs and wonders, we're designed to be the sign and wonder.
For sure.
You know, when you see an artist in today's world prospering and happy and joyful and creating from a place of life with all of their needs met financially and being a blessing to others, that looks different.
Yeah.
And people want to know about that. And that causes people to wonder and go, what are you doing? And I think that's as much of the calling for all of us as kingdom people. So.
Oh, that's so good.
Absolutely.
You know, people in because we opened it's called Native Healing and Wellness. And so it's a, you know, alternative, we call it preventative medicine, but really you should just do it all the time.
Yeah.
But it's got like red light therapy and a PEMF mat and anyways, all these weird things. But we get a lot of new age people that roll up in there. And that is the very first thing that everybody says.
Yeah.
Wow, the vibe in here is so good. It doesn't feel like Tyler.
Yeah.
We have so many people who are like, this doesn't feel like the normal Tyler. And I'm like, well, it's not. It's the kingdom. But welcome. But that's also what we tell our staff is like, yo, we don't preach here.
Yeah.
You're led by the Lord. And if the Lord gives you an open door, release it. But like, we're not trying to convert every new age person.
Yeah.
They'll actually just feel the Lord here.
Yeah.
And he's actually going to follow them as soon as they walk out as well.
Yeah.
So like
that alone, man, the fact that they feel it and you know your intention in the whole thing is the Lord, is the kingdom. And they come in and say, oh, the vibes of this, that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Hit.
I think as much as we're all thankful for the work of evangelists and all the, you know, those sort of overt people that are called to reap the harvest, and we're all called to be, you know, sharing Jesus and that sort of thing.
Totally.
I think there's the other side of that is, am I confident enough in who God is in me and through me that I can sow a seed or encourage somebody and trust that that's just as much part of his plan for that person as is them coming to the Lord right there in that moment.
Yeah.
Totally.
And,
well, even Paul says that.
Yeah.
Like some people reap, some people sow, some people water. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's the Lord that's doing the harvest. So the rest of us just play your part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but striving religious Western mindset is how many people have you led to the Lord? How many people are in your church? I don't want to know how many people you led to the Lord. I want to know how many people you discipled this year.
Yeah.
How many people are still come at your church?
How many people did you help connect to the Lord?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway.
Well, when I was listening to you, I turned off my thing the other day and I was just praying for you. And I felt that for you. I felt like you were a bridger. I saw you connecting people to the Lord and then hands off and letting that connection flow.
Yeah.
The freedom of that and the freedom of trusting the Lord to do his job in that. I feel like you are that. You're a bridger.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I feel like you season the people that you connect.
Yeah.
Like you season them and you saturate.
Yeah.
You help. You are the wind.
Yeah,
you're wind at their sails.
I'm rubbing that in.
Good. I felt that. A bridger. I got that one. It's like, okay.
Feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's cool. The art. Yeah.
So in your whole experience, what would you say has been the sweetest encounter that you've had with the Lord that really caused like the wellspring to come out? Is there any one thing, or do you feel like it was like a series of events that kind of caused the whole artistry to erupt out of you?
Well, I think I've had a number of encounters with the Lord over the year. I think one of the first big ones for me was when I was a Methodist youth pastor and leading worship, and I was even a connector back then. I was doing this community thing. I got all these people together, and a friend of mine who was the youth pastor at the Assembly of God Church, he said, "You sound just like this guy, Lyndall Cooley, down at the Brownsville Revival when you lead worship." I'm like, "Who is that? What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Yeah, they got a revival down in Pensacola, and I'm like, "Yeah, we got a revival too. We got the spring revival and the fall revival." He's like, "This ain't what I'm talking about, And
Did you get to go down there?
Well, so he gave me a Charisma magazine. This was 1997, and right in the thick of the revival. He gave me a Charisma magazine. On the back of it was an advertisement for the first worship conference that they had down there. And it was like the day before the deadline or something. And so I registered and went down there by myself. Now, I'd been to like a Church of God but I mean, I was, and I was into praise and worship and everything, but I had never been in like a spirit-filled, service like that, much less what was going on down there. And I went down there to Brownsville, and man, the presence of God, I don't know if y'all are much younger than I am, but it's like people were waiting for 12 and 14 hours a day to get in there in the hot Pensacola sun. And they would get in an hour before and the worship would start, and they would worship for 3+ hours. And the glory of the Lord, was so strong in that place. And then Steve Hill would get up and preach, and thousands of people would come to the Lord, and you'd be in the church till 2:00 in the morning, and then they'd get up and do the same thing again. And it went on for years. Yeah. Like that every day. And I feel the Holy Spirit now. And so I was like under the pew, like for 3 days. It was I'm not kidding, like the weight of God's presence was so strong in that it really reset my heart. I was like, it's like when you see a beautiful mountain vista, or you see something you've never seen before, you're like, I didn't even know this was possible. Yeah. Like this is a whole nother level of glory and a whole nother level of his presence. And I went back to the church that I was leading worship at, and this was kind of a seeker-sensitive church, back in the 90s. So we were literally playing secular music and some praise and worship, and just trying to, I was just glad to be there. And but I go back, and I heard Rita Springer and Lyndall Cooley and all these vineyard guys, and I started going to vineyard worship conferences and started learning about intimacy in worship, and learned about Morning Star and Ray Hughes and Don Potter and all these guys that are now, mentors and friends in my life. And I'm like, oh my God. I just started. So I got fired from that church pretty quickly thereafter, but it set me on this journey of like, whoa, there are depths of God's presence.
Yeah.
And I ended up working at a church about a year later for a guy that was on staff at the Brownsville Revival School of Ministry.
Wow.
And got to go down there a lot and be involved in that. And actually one night at a prayer meeting, it was totally the Lord. Lyndall was not there leading worship. Whoever was supposed to lead worship wasn't there. They were just playing CDs. The place was packed, all this. And my pastor goes, I'm going to go see if you can lead worship. I'm like, what? What? Just off the cuff,
Love it.
And I got to lead worship that night up on the stage. Wow. I was like, this is so surreal. This is crazy. But that really was a marker moment, I think, for me, to really know that there was so much more of God's presence and his glory, and to be able to press into that, and just the fluidity of which, in which people were hearing his voice and prophesying, and prophetic ministry was going on. And like I had never heard people in that worship down there, they would sing, and then after that, it would be like 20 minutes of singing in the Spirit.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about these waves of glory. I mean, I can't even explain it. It was like being in an ocean of his presence, and it would lift and it would go down. I just, I'm like feeling it right now. But that really was a marker for me that I think as a worship leader, it really caused me to believe that our job as worship leaders is to lift the sail.
Yeah.
We lift the sail and we set the direction, and we where, Lord, are you going? Where do you want to blow? How can I follow you and lead people in that? And I think that same belief, that core belief, is the way I try to live my life.
Yeah.
It's the way I try to run business. It's the way I try to teach other people to flow in the kingdom. Like, this is his story.
Yeah.
This is his thing. I forget who was it, Jim Elliott or somebody, that said, if you would do the best with your life, find out what God is doing in your generation and fling yourself into it.
Yeah.
It's
that's good.
I want to get on board with what you're doing. And when I do that, whether it's in worship or life or business or whatever, that's the place of flow. That's the place of favor and alignment,
And people come alive in that.
Oh,
your person. I was going to Morningstar. Like, I was like a conference junkie there during my college years.
Yeah.
And I would literally, because I was so hungry and I was over here in East Texas, I was like, I got to go somewhere. So I was going to Reading, and then I would go to IHOP, and then I was going to Morningstar. Like,
wow.
I was so flipping hungry. Yeah. I was like, anything I'm here for. But I remember I was at Morningstar, and Susie was leading, and there was just this, I've never experienced it like I did there. Yeah. And it was like my whole brain exploded, because I was like, there's so much more.
Yeah.
And I felt like just that, like just the uncapping of letting yourself go into more is so important, because that is also where you come alive. Yeah. If you let yourself go.
Yeah. Well, I think about those days. I mean, I don't know if you know Ray Hughes, that, Ray's like a spiritual father to me, and wrote the foreword to Unlocking the Heart of the Artist, and just, his minstrel series that he did back in the day. I've still got the cassette tapes of that thing. I mean,
can I borrow those?
I know. Like, what is it? But just, in the impartation of learning to flow with the Lord as opposed to doing things for him. I mean, I think so much of what I've done intuitively in worship as a worship leader has informed the way I create art, the way I try to live life and do business, and all of that is, just trusting that the undercurrent of this whole thing, that God's in control, that even though I get off, I don't do it all right. I strive, I have my own plans, whatever, but I just got to get back in the river with him and flow with him. So
I feel like it's way easier, than we think.
Yeah.
Like, I was talking to my husband this morning. We were just kind of talking through like the whole renewing of the mind, right? Yeah. I think Jesus accomplished that on the cross.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the simplicity of all you have to do is change your mind about a moment.
And align with him, yeah.
That's repentance. It's just like, oof, I didn't realize I was going down that road. Yeah. My bad. And you're back on. Like, you're instantly back in the river.
And it's his goodness that leads to that.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And like,
seeing
you don't even have to like do the whole shindig,
or ask for forgiveness. You're forgiven.
Yeah. Just
forgiveness isn't reciprocal, right? It's like, oh, it's done.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's receiving what's already been accomplished.
Absolutely.
And that gets you right back in the flow.
Yes.
It's good stuff.
And hearing your story about that, like feeling God's presence in the waves and just the amount of people and stuff, this is making me feel thankfulness for the body, seeing the maturity of the Lord's body over the course of years. Like everybody's like, oh, the church is this and that, but it's like, no, man, it's maturing as a whole.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's so beautiful to see it.
Yeah.
All the ups and downs of it, and that core heart of Jesus, like when the church started, when he initiated it, on this rock I'll build my church, is all the way up to this moment and like lives in us. And it's just fascinating to see the body. And it's like, where is it going? What happens when an entire world full of people like that has that wave thing going? What is that? That's making space in the wilderness.
I think that, it's interesting as you get a little older and you look at, church history in our generation, at least, you have like Azusa Street, it happened in one place, and then you get the healing revivals of the 50s and all that. And then you look at Brownsville and Toronto and, all those places, Lakeland and all those things that happen in these places. And I think now, and I, thankful for Bill Johnson and Bethel and all this stuff that I think they have really been used by the Lord in a huge way over the last 20 years to help people realize that, hey, the kingdom's now not just here. You don't have to come to Reading to get it.
Yeah.
It's it's for all of us, and it's in all of us and through all of us.
Yeah.
And so it's now this multiplication movement.
For sure.
And I think that's what I'm thankful for these moments. I'm thankful for these places.
Yeah.
But I'm really passionate, I think, about that we're all carriers of revival. We're all that, in fact, if we would walk in the fullness of the kingdom, it would look like revival, but it's really just the kingdom working normally. And I think, unfortunately, we're so surprised by it when it happens. Oh my gosh, somebody got healed, or but like, this is normal. And the more we can all normalize the supernatural and walking in that, I think the more we're going to see the kingdom come.
Absolutely.
So good.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe that.
Absolutely.
I think that is one of the things that the Lord is establishing in this region. Is consistency of releasing the kingdom. Like not just, it was a bomb 4 years. I want to see this thing until I live to be, well, I'm never dying. But
I'm just changing locations, just changing addresses.
Listen, maybe I may just be Enoch. I'll just phase back and forth. You know what I mean? Like I want to be
translated.
I'll just translate back and forth. But,
well, I mean, that's part of it. But the supernatural, like you experiencing that, it makes it a reality. It's like, I'm gunning for that. Well, that's the resolve.
That's normal Christianity.
That's life. That is true life.
I think that's the big shift right now that I think is, you talk about breaking off the spirit of religion or whatever. I think that, we're all waiting for these moments. It's easy to relate to God as a God of breakthrough, but can you also relate to God as sustainer, as the one that's walking with you, the one that's leading you from glory to glory?
Yes.
And it's, we want the moments, but we want a movement of moments. We want moments every day, not just on Sunday morning, not just in that place, but in every place, through every person.
Every person.
That only comes as you understand, I call it God's ideal, your identity, your design, your assignment, and expansion, your alignment in the kingdom, and then walking out of that place of love. That's how you begin to walk in that fullness. So,
so good.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like you can just sit on that.
Oh, yeah.
Selah.
Yeah.
I feel, though, that exactly is the identity. Like, the identity is the crux of all things. Like, knowing that you're the beloved. Like, you have to know that he is well pleased in you, in your life. Even if you make crappy decisions, he's well pleased. Like, you're not defined by your behavior. And I've seen that wave. I grew up a staunch Southern Baptist pastor's kid. And so like everything was based in behavior. And so then when you actually meet the Lord and have these like real encounters, it's like, whoa, he doesn't care so much. He doesn't think that your mess is so big, you know, like he just wants you to actually live and live fully and bring, like, that's why it's like the works of the flesh. He's like, yo, these things are just going to keep you in cycles. I want you to be free of them. Like these behaviors, these cyclical things you go through is just, I want you to be whole. That's all. So let those go.
That's like I tell artists all the time. I'm like, I think God cares much more that you create than what you create. It's
so
like,
good.
Just get in the studio and do the thing that you're created to do. And whether that's business or being with your family or being in the community or whatever it is, when you step into that place of design, and assignment, that's where provision and favor flow. That's where opportunities and ideas and resources and relationships, all that comes when you step into the river that God's got for you.
Yeah.
So
that's like, so James has
chips.
Well, the business idea.
Oh, sorry.
Know?
I thought you were talking about the front and chips on the shelf.
Oh, that's true. That's good too. You can go into that story.
I've probably shared that multiple times. Well, I just that functioning in that in that creativity. I applied it to fronting chips one day.
Yeah.
On a shelf. Like then one day I was sculpting snow shepherds and wizards in my yard, and the next I'm like fronting chips on the shelf. But I tapped into that same love.
Yeah.
Like do everything under the Lord, fronting, and it's like if people can come feel the good vibes off the chip aisle that I fronted,
Sure.
It's like it's something we're built to live in, and function in all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chips.
I was just saying, well, the business idea that you've had that you're like going down the road on, it was like James, he was like, no, like the Lord has told me, like, basically I've gotten the green light to do whatever I want.
Yeah,
like you don't have to sit there in turmoil. Like, should I do this? Should I not? Like, no, just go flip and create.
Create. Yeah.
I really love teaching people about vision. The Bible says without vision, the people perish.
Yeah.
The word vision is prophetic revelation. Perish means to cast off restraint.
Yeah.
And so unless you have a clear vision, idea, revelation from the Lord, you're going to be bouncing around like a chicken with your head cut off.
Yeah.
Right? Looking, striving, trying to find things. But when God gives you vision, he's giving you the opportunity and the authority to begin to move into that area.
Yeah.
So all you got to do in that place is just say, thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you for showing me. I call it see and agree. I see what you're doing. I agree with it in my heart. And now I'm going to start walking toward that in faith. And that is the process of prophetic creativity. And it's not just for artists. That's how the kingdom gets into the earth. Through the relationship, God reveals things. I say yes to it. Then I put my hands to the plow. God leads me. The idea that was once in my head now becomes incarnate in the earth. And through that process, now the kingdom gets released.
Yeah.
Transformation, abundance happens. That's art. That's kingdom. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's it. See and agree. Yeah.
Well, that's what we were saying. Like, that's what faith is.
Yeah.
Like, you actually make space for that. When you actually agree, you actually, like, you're causing that thing to manifest here.
Yes.
See and
that is having
co-laborers
faith
with him too. Like, we're doing this together. And then when it happens, it's like, well, there's belief. There's authority.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's heaven on earth.
I remember one time when I was writing the book Creativity According to the Kingdom, and the Lord was dealing with me a lot about faith and creativity and all this. And he said, I want you to go and start looking at words in the Bible, and where it says faith, I just want you to replace it with art. I was like, is this heresy? Like, I don't know, but I'm gonna do it, just for right now. And so it's like, well, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Art is the substance of things hoped for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's the evidence of things not seen. It's the proof that the thing that I had in my mind is now written.
It's on paper. Wow.
That works. Okay, so with the faith of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move and be cast into the sea. With the art of a mustard seed, you mean with just a little bit of the fruit of seeing and agreeing with you. When I bring that thing into manifestation, you could use that little bitty thing to dislodge something in somebody's life.
Yeah.
A
So
roadblock, bust through a roadblock. That's why when people hear a song or read a book or go to a play, they could have heard 10,000 sermons, but in that one moment of creative release, now they're healed. Now they come to the Lord. Now there's breakthrough. Why? Because seeing and agreeing. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Without seeing and without that art, that process of seeing and agreeing, it's impossible to please God. Absolutely, because anything else other than me sensing what he's doing and agreeing with that in my heart, anything else is striving.
Yeah.
And so it's really wild. I think it just solidifies this co-laboring relationship that God's given us, that is the only thing that we're called to do, is to have our ear to his chest and to agree with what he's called us to do in our circle of influence, in line with our design, and to flow in that. And when you do that, you're fulfilled. That's the key to you living the abundant life. That's the key to the kingdom flowing in who you are.
So simple,
That's
dude.
it, yeah.
It's so simple.
That's it.
It's so brilliant, man. So where do you feel like the Lord is leading you now? Where do you feel like you're in, and where are you going?
Yeah, so that message to the wider audience, to the wider body of Christ. I think that, from a marketing perspective, I've loved the niche that I'm in of I'm kind of the guy that speaks to Christian artists about, life and the kingdom and business and all that. And the fun thing, though, having mentored thousands of artists now through our program and all of that, you hear these incredible stories of people saying, well, my husband or my wife listens to these with me, or my kids are picking up on this, and now they're changing and they're stepping out in faith. And so you just realize that the Lord told me, he said, we're all called as artists. We're all called to see and agree. We're all called to release this creative nature. That's just how creativity is how the kingdom manifests, how the kingdom happens, and functions. And so he's having me take all of that. I've tried to wrap it up as concisely as I can in this new book, God's Plan for Living, and release that to the wider body and see what the next steps are. So it's kind of two wings of the plane. I'm still going to be doing all the stuff I'm doing with artists, because that's always a passion, and the Lord's not said stop that. But there is this expansion and widening as well.
So cool.
Yeah. So it's nervous, and I'm totally uncomfortable with it. And
I like it.
Well, it's just not. It doesn't all make sense in my natural mind, but I'm seeing Him confirm the steps, day by day. So,
I love that. It's like it's almost like once the picture is finished, and then you look backwards, you're like, oh, I get it now. This one makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So
it'll be fun to watch it grow and play out.
I'm excited. I mean, I told my wife the other day, I was like, I don't want to be just one more guy saying, live your best life, and all that. But I don't feel like that's what, I mean, we need everybody saying that kind of thing. But I'm just trying to, like all of us, I'm trying to bring the things that I've learned so far on the journey to as many people as I can, so they can do that.
Love it.
And be authentically who God's called me to be at the same time. So.
Well, because there is no competition.
No, there's not.
Right. There's only completion.
Yeah.
So it's like, even in that realm, people may all be saying the same narrative, but you're bringing another piece to the puzzle that so many people actually need.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's in business, you can have 5 sandwich shops on the same street, and you're going to like that one, I'm going to like this one. And it's the same thing with, there will be people that will resonate with you that don't resonate with me, and vice versa. And I think that goes back to trusting, this is your journey. I'm at work in you and through you, and you can trust me to take care of you and walk with you in that. So that's
because it's not about it is about the people, but it's not about pleasing the people. It's actually about just the journey with the Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
If you get focused on the people, and are they accepting it? Are they doing if you're looking for the outcome of things, you've missed so much of the great richness that it is to just walk with the Lord.
Yeah. Well, what you said in that last little montage we made was, everybody has a piece of Him. And when you share it, other people can see that different, unique piece of Him together. So that eliminates competition in itself there. And if everyone is whole and walking out His plans and purposes for you, there's room for everybody.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think my passion, in being a mentor all these years to artists primarily, I've really become passionate about how can I help people experience transformation quicker, easier, in a more, direct way. I think that's one of the things that frustrates people about church so much, is that people get up and they talk about align with God and, renew your mind and do all that. And they're like, how?
Yeah.
Totally. There's nothing practical.
I would if I would,
Yeah.
And so I think
the heart is willing.
Yeah. And so I think that's one thing that, when people kept coming to our artist program, they're just like, oh my gosh, I've been a believer. I had a lady that she was in ministry for many, many years, had her doctorate in theology. She said, I've learned more about the kingdom and walking with the Lord with you in these last 3 years than I have in all of my theological training.
Yeah.
And I think just, again, trying to connect the dots with people in a practical way so that they can start seeing transformation happen quickly in their life. That builds faith, and that helps for them to, I think, feel the momentum that they need to keep going.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. That's what, early on, what I would do is just write down what he would tell me, and write down questions I had for him.
Yeah.
And draw pictures of dreams that I had.
Yeah.
That's immediate heaven to earth. We've talked about that's putting it on paper, making it here.
Absolutely.
That's a great starting place.
Yeah. And the simplicity of just doing it. I mean, I did a podcast on my podcast the other day with a friend of mine that's a pastor in Iowa, and he said when the Lord was teaching him how to walk by faith, he just said, I want you to do one thing by faith every day.
Mm.
And he said, I did it for a year. And he said, my business that I had at the time went from bankrupt and about to lose everything to we had to take out loans to do more. We were growing by leaps and bounds, and this complete turnaround financially, business, all this stuff. But it's like God can do more with your yes than you can with all your striving, so crazy.
Awesome.
That is so cool. I love that story though, where you go literally step by step.
Yeah.
I think that's the key to a lot of things in life.
Yeah.
You don't, I do think you have to see things, but you don't have to see the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To do the next step, you don't have to have the whole thing.
Be faithful with the little.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Great.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to put your stuff in the show notes, your books.
Nice.
Where else can people listen to you?
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
Yeah. So MattTommeyMentoring.com is the website. That's primarily my artist mentoring website right now, but I think that's going to continue to be where we're going to house everything. And there'll just kind of be two doors to enter into.
Yeah.
For folks as God's Plan for Living comes out. And I'm hoping that's going to be out in April this year. And
Excellent.
then I'm writing a devotional book with that. I made the mistake of asking people on Facebook what link they wanted. And they said 365, and I was like, that's a lot of something,
Yeah.
So it's gonna be more work than the book. So I don't know.
Yikes.
Yeah, I'm like, what about a 30-day? No, but I'm thinking that's gonna come out.
Just tell them to repeat every 30 days.
I
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just get it in you, brother. Just rehearse the goodness of the Lord. But so that's going to be coming out. We'll probably do a course with that and community, and so. Just excited to see what happens. But all of that can be found eventually at Matt Tommey Mentoring. And then I'm on all the social platforms, YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. And I've not made it over to TikTok yet, but
that's a hard jump, man.
Yeah. So anyway.
Right.
If you look me up, you can find me. So.
Yeah.
I like
Excellent.
it. Yeah. James and I have been having this go around. TikTok it's hard.
Yeah.
Man, it's tough. Yeah.
I feel like I'm just too old. Like I'm right on that cusp where I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
It's too much for me.
I barely got off of MySpace recently.
Yeah, I know. Me too. My profile's still up.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I think I call it the TikTokification of communication, and part of me really resists that, because it's living life through these miniature sound bites. And,
yep.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm like, well, if other people are out there, I want to be in those places as well. So it's just always that balance of trying to figure out where do I spend my time, the investment, and what's it worth.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's like you could throw something in there and it'd be fruitful.
Yeah,
and I've been on that same track.
Yeah,
I had a vision, dream. I can't remember what it was, but I don't know if this is going to happen, but I felt like there's going to be like some sort of movement where people step away from it all.
Yeah,
where it's like, okay, this is clearly, you can feel the addiction aspect of it.
Oh yeah,
it feels the same as many other things. But I feel like people are going to start stepping away from it, and that it will become a trend to step away and be present.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know.
I mean, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I know that people are, well, it's just like we talked about this podcast. Like, I'm doing podcasts all over the place on Zoom and all that. And when you asked me to come here in the studio, I was like to see you face to face, like, what? Oh my God,
Yeah.
But you forget, like, that's where life happens, we got to see each other and that sort of thing. I think people are longing for that. And it's why, communities, whether they're online or in person, I mean, I think people are longing for some sort of place that they can be seen, known, heard, felt, all that. So,
and the world offers us all these things, all the TV, everything like that. And it's not bad, but I think people are going to taste of everything.
Yeah.
And then be like, this isn't it.
Yeah.
And I think the Lord being available, it's like, okay, I'm going to pursue what's substantial, what's true, what's authentic, and it's Him.
Yep.
So are you going to start like a seminar out at your barn where everybody can come for a weekend? We could do like a weekend retreat.
Yeah.
You host them
funny.
all.
I was talking to Ray Hughes last fall, and I'm just about transitioning in my own life, and he said, Matt, he said, watch out for anywhere you see God moving. He said He's going to be moving in the next season in barns, fields, and old theaters. And I was like, okay. I said, well, I got a barn and a field. He said,
come on.
2 out of 3 ain't bad,
Wow.
2 out of 3.
Yeah, I don't know.
You'll almost make the cut then.
That's right. Yeah, I think we're like everybody trying to figure out what our next steps are. And I have a real comfort level with media and and all of that. I had a prophetic word back in 2012 in Scotland that the Lord was going to use media to amplify my voice and all that. And that's what he's been doing.
She has, yeah.
And yet at the same time, I feel this real longing for community and connection and people.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's, feeling, even like when you go to church and, you guys have an incredible church here in town, but, you go to so many churches and, you you're there for the service, and then 10 minutes after the service is over, the place is empty.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nobody's connecting. Nobody's going to lunch. Nobody's talking. And I'm like, that's just not the kind of, I got better things to do than to go listen to a talking head.
Sure.
We are looking for community that we can do life with.
Yeah.
People. And so I think, like we're saying, the more people are hungering for that and choosing to say, you know what? I think COVID changed a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't have to go into a church just to fulfill some religious obligation. I want to go to somewhere where I'm receiving life, giving life, in relationship with people. And I think there's a rising discontent with people that are hungry for that. And it's not out of they're doing it wrong and all that. It's just out of we're desperate for it. We need it.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's the longing of the kingdom that's coming forth.
Yeah.
Really. I think it's hunger is being uncovered.
Yeah.
Because it's all in us. We're all hungry for connection. We're wired that way.
Yeah.
I feel like the Lord's just pulling back the sheet just a little bit. Like, yo, this is really what you were created for.
Yeah, absolutely. So
you let us know when we're having a party at your barn.
Well,
we're coming.
I told my wife we moved here. I said, baby, we just need to get 100 chairs and open the barn up. And,
man.
And you're like, what are you talking about? So anyway, we'll see. I'll use the religious answer as the Lord leads. As the Lord leads.
You get the religious pass.
That's right. That'll be my default.
Put it on
answer,
his plate.
So.
That's great. Well, Matt, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. I know it was kind of last minute, and you
Nailed
just
it.
leaped out here and hopped on. And
No,
just
I
came
love
up
it.
here.
It's a joy. So always glad to do
We'll
it.
have to bring you back because this was fun.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate your perspective. I appreciate your heart. I feel like I was just thinking through when we were doing just talking, like, I was like, man, you are so my older brother. Like, I just had that older brother sense that's just like, yo, you have trudged the path. You have gone into the hard spaces. You've looked at the hard things.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, you're so like-minded, and I so appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, guys. We'll see y'all next
See you
time.
next time. If you enjoyed this episode of the Ancient Way podcast, drop us a like, share with your friends, share with your family. And if you'd like to support us and what we are doing, and you would like to play a direct role in our growth and things that we do in the future,
we have a donation spot at the bottom of our show notes. So you can click on that, give however much you want. We appreciate absolutely everything. We appreciate our listeners. And everybody that's already come alongside and encouraged us, and even everybody that's been on our show. So thanks, guys.